I was going to divide my talk today in three sections: Pakistan, telecom, and then the emerging environment or emerging technologies. Nadir has already given a flavor of Pakistan, not a hugely positive one, but that's the reality, and we mustn't ignore the elephant in the room. But I'd like to keep my talk somewhat positive, although of late I've been talking about digital emergency, digital catastrophe, and trying to scare the government that unless we make the right policy interventions, we are heading towards digital dark ages. But given that you've already done that to a certain extent, I'll try to improvise and perhaps lift our spirits. Today's problems are perhaps yesterday's solutions, but that doesn't mean that today's problems shouldn't become tomorrow's solutions. I started my career very similar to yours in 1994, and in a different way. Telecom has done remarkably well, and I was talking to Shahid Saab this morning. At that time, we were thinking about an ARPU of $68 and 500,000 connections in total in the country. Today, we have 190 million SIMs. Unfortunately, the ARPU is less than $1, and I'll talk about that, and that brings me a lot of pain. So since you've covered the first section about Pakistan, and certainly we do have short memories, this is a crisis and this too will pass, but we must brace for the disruption. And as business leaders, we must ensure that our companies can pass through and survive this 3 to a 30-month horizon that I think is going to be difficult and challenging. Energy, fuel prices, foreign currency constraints, you have some elements of deteriorating law and order situation, but again, this does not mean that there isn't really going to be a rosier future that we have to collectively build. I will save that section on Pakistan and perhaps give you back the 5 minutes that Nadir overtook. That's okay. But I will now pivot more towards telecom and then more so towards emerging technologies. So telecom is not a sector anymore. It's a cross-sectoral enabler. It's the electricity of the future, and as we say, internet is the electricity of the future and data is the new oil. Unfortunately for us in Pakistan, we are not priced like oil or energy. And that basically creates a number of issues for us. Now, if we have to keep on moving forward when we talk about a cross-sector enabler, every sector, every industry is going to become technology-oriented. So finance is going to become fintech, education is going to become edtech, agriculture, agritech. And if you think about it, the challenges that we have as a country, we have, by estimates, about 25 million kids out of school. They will not be able to get an education in the traditional means. We do not have enough time. Perhaps we do not have enough bricks, teachers, to be able to put them through. However, you give them a device like this, and if you throw an internet connection, then at least basic literacy can be given to them. And that's what we need as a nation. We can't leave people behind. We can't leave 25 million children behind, and every year that number may unfortunately increase. So the thing about telecom, yes, we will continue to build towers, we will continue to sell SIMs, but that's not where we're headed. For us to be relevant as a sector, for us to be able to play our part in making sure that Pakistan is a more prosperous country, we have to make sure that there is a smartphone in every hand and an internet connection in every home. And that responsibility lies on 3 or 4 companies in Pakistan. 98% of the internet users in Pakistan are on mobile. I had the privilege and a responsibility to be working with the Prime Minister more recently on the PM task force on IT and telecom, and I will talk about the software opportunities that Nadir alluded to. But before we do that, I want to address one element, and that is around 5G. Now, there is a lot of expectation, and many countries around the world have embarked upon the 5G journey. Customers typically think that 5G is faster internet. Governments think of 5G as a means of making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in auctions. The vendors of equipment think of 5G as an opportunity to boost their sales. Yet the telecom operators think it's none of the above. So let me explain what 5G is. It is certainly an exponentially better technology, but if we just want a faster internet, which everybody deserves in this country, and a more expansive one, a more robust one, we certainly can do a much better job with the existing resources that we have. What we do need is a faster internet and a more robust one and an affordable one. And 4G can do that. So I will pledge that basically us as a country should get towards 4G for all rather than 5G for a few. Today, less than 1% of the devices in Pakistan are 5G equipped. The average price of a 5G handset, the lowest entry model handset, is about $200. That would make it more than 55,000 rupees today. And unfortunately, we are still struggling with how to classify telecom as an industry. While for most of you, it has reached the prominence and the importance of a life-saving drug, because every time your call drops, you give me a call, or if the internet is working slowly, we get blasted on Twitter. And that's something that you do deserve. You have gotten used to deserving and to make sure that there is internet and a robust internet for everyone. However, the government today still thinks that telecom is a luxury sector, and it is taxed as such. And that thinking must change. And it mustn't change only because I, as a CEO of a company, am saying so, but because if we do not change that thinking and we think that education, which will come through EdTech, is a luxury, we can't afford to think like that. That's a fundamental thing and an ask that I have, and I've consistently had. So as we go towards newer technologies, we have to think about making sure that we do not leave anybody behind. And whilst the numbers are quite impressive, and we talk about 190 million SIMs in terms of real number of people, it's probably only about 110 million people because of the dual SIM phenomena. Now, the unique thing about Pakistan is that it's an area where a phone like this costs you about $2,000, going back to the luxury thing. This is, by the way, an older phone, so it's probably $300, $400, but the new iPhone is about $2,000 here in Pakistan. That thinking has to change. I think every child is a smart nation. If what we aspire to be, we want to make sure that we equip them with education, and that education, like I said, is going to come at the back of affordable smartphones. And that thinking within the government must change. And I certainly do my part. My colleagues within the industry try to do theirs as well. For us to survive, and I'm not a futurologist, but certainly within my own sector, I can tell you that we are struggling and pivoting from what we expected the government to do. We have to take some ownership for where we are ourselves. And certainly, I think we should be able to price our products in line with inflation. And that is not only relevant for us as an industry, but I think anybody who's sitting in this room and running organizations and in leadership positions must embrace yourself for the disruption that Nader has already alluded to. He said, raise your hands if your business has not been disrupted. Ours has been completely disrupted because of 3 or 4 forces. The first one, we talked about energy and fuel prices. So as a telco, I run about 15,000 factories. These factories are towers. They need electricity. When the electricity goes away, which is for about 10 to 12 hours a day, I have to rely on batteries, for which I have to spend dollars, which are becoming more expensive and scarce. And then the third source is fuel, which again is becoming expensive. So again, for everybody over here, think about how do you minimize not only your energy costs, but also any dollarized cost. We certainly as telcos are now looking at how do we actually combat our energy costs. And just to give you an idea, my energy bill for next year is going to be almost 3 times of what it was last year. In rupee terms, close to about 50 billion rupees just in energy cost. Cannot afford that, and unfortunately cannot pass that entire bill to the customers either. So moving forward again, in the next 2-year horizon, energy cost and any other cost which is dollarized, we have to think about. At the same time, you look at the flip side, revenues. We have to start thinking about how do we create hard currency revenues from going external, from making sure that we invest in elements. Again, I'll come to the software component. But us as a company, and most of the telecom companies around the world have gone through this journey where they've tried to become more of a digital operator rather than just providing dumb bit pipes. And that traditionally meant more around just providing services which compete with the OTTs or over-the-top players. But now here in the context of Pakistan, I'm certainly looking at what else can I do where I have dollarized revenue. So these are the 2 things which are actually going to be extremely important for our near-term horizon, the next 2 years. How do I minimize dollarized costs, and how do I create revenue which is more resilient and perhaps harder currencied? At the same time, we did talk about affordable handsets. It was very encouraging to see in Pakistan there are about 25 companies that have been set up to at least start assembling handsets and perhaps in due course of time exporting them. Enough about telecom. Now let's look at adjacencies from telecom. And the biggest one that we believe in, and I look forward to hearing from Aurangzeb also, but we're entering into his space, which is banking and payments. And that's not just us as telcos, but I think one of the bigger gaps in Pakistan still is that we are a massively underbanked country and an underbanked society. Our reliance on cash is very high, and that slows down transactions, that slows down commerce. And while we typically think about consumer lending, I think one of the things that has been neglected in the past has been small, medium enterprises and giving them enough working capital so that they can become larger organizations compared to the small startups that they have been resigned to. So certainly, I think digital payments, and State Bank has recently issued a 5 license for digital banks also. But with or without those licenses, I think one of the biggest opportunities for us as a country is to make sure that not only do we put a phone in every hand, but we also equip every person with a financial instrument, whether that's a saving instrument, a lending instrument, or just an ability to make a payment. So again, when I think about trends, when I think about 2 or 3 areas that are going to be quite exciting in the next 2 years, digital payments, digital lending, digital financial ecosystem is something that I'm extremely bullish about and certainly a bright spot in our future. Then I'd like to talk about cloud and cloud computing. We're not going to be investing, and hopefully companies are not going to be investing in hardware as they used to. Pakistani data must remain in Pakistan, and for that, I think it's extremely important that we build in the capacity not only for the new startups and the ecosystem, the digital ecosystem is coming, but I think also from a security perspective. I work a lot with the government on cybersecurity, and one of the things that worries me, and I think would become a source of worry for everybody who runs an organization today, are their cybersecurity policies and their data privacy constraints. So us as a country, we are exposed, our digital frontiers are exposed, so there's going to be a lot of emphasis for each one of us and at a national policy level that we secure our data. And for that, it is extremely important that the Pakistani data remains in Pakistan. And we are a data producing country. We talk about the 230 million population. We are the 5th largest, and by default that means that you will also have the 5th largest population that uses WhatsApp, that uses Facebook, that uses Twitter, and all the other social media platforms. And every time that you are using one of these social media, you are creating golden digital dust. Yes, thank you. So this gold dust that we are creating is being encashed by companies out of Pakistan. And that's the huge opportunity for companies like myself and those that will be joining the digital ecosystem soon to think about how do we actually benefit from this data. And that gets me to pivot onto the third element, or a bright ray of hope, is the ad tech. We as a company are pivoting from being a telecom company to being a technology company to being a data company. And we keep on saying data is the new oil, but we have to process that oil. Unprocessed data is of no good to anybody. So we're spending a lot of our time and energy in analyzing that data, in using analytics as a service not only for ourselves, but for our clients now. We are going as a company into digital arenas, in new areas, from video, Tamasha, into fintech, Jazz Cash. But that, again, is not a business in itself that attracts us, but because it creates a huge opportunity for us to get into an individual level insights. And once you get into those insights, then the opportunity is advertising. So again, for people who are really thinking about what are going to be the evolving and the emerging trends coming out of Pakistan, I would say yes, 5G perhaps would be a little bit late in Pakistan. I don't see the relevance. I don't see why we should spend our scarce resources as a country on 5G that benefits only 1% of the population. However, I'm extremely bullish on digital banking, on digital payments, and digital lending. And then our third opportunity is going to be ad tech, which is going to be how do we utilize all the data, Why should all the ads on the digital platform be encached by the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world? What are the alternatives here in Pakistan that can use the Pakistani data that all of you are creating, but it's being captured, analyzed, utilized, and monetized by companies who do not even exist in Pakistan? So whether the future is bright or it is bleak, it is entirely up to us. It is going to be how we decide to live our future. Thank you very much.